Hi, this is Peter with another episode in the series Digitize Your Books, Digitize Your Library, Digitize Your Life. In this episode, I'm going to show you the steps that I do in detail in processing a book after I have scanned it. Processing a book is very important because we want to end up with a PDF document that is easy to use and is easy to read, is legible, and is compact in size, has a reasonably small compact file size. So I'm going to show you as I go through a processing of a book. Now I'm going to keep track of file sizes as we go because again that's one of the goals. Now I have scanned this particular book. It right now you can see is 111,000 kilobytes, and we'll keep an eye on that as we scan it through. And it is a book that is about 250 pages, a little under that. So I've just opened it up in Adobe Acrobat Pro. First, I like to just make it so I can see the full page at once. The first thing I do is I build up the electronic table of contents. And let me show you how I do that. So first, I need an entry for Voodoo Science. Now you could create the table of contents by opening this drawer and then opening the bookmarks page and then adding a bookmark and giving it a title. And that is certainly what we're going to do, but I'm going to do it a bit faster. Let me show you the shortcut. So the first thing I do is I don't have to open the drawer, it'll open automatically. First keyboard shortcut, Control-B. If I hit Control-B, that immediately gives me a bookmark. Hit F2 to edit it and call it cover. Then I page down to the table of contents page. Oh, and notice as we go through here, I have scanned in the desk jacket, including the inside flaps. I've even scanned the hardcover, which is maybe a bit overkill, but again, I'm trying to preserve the original look and feel of the book. This is my long-term library project. I don't just want the date in the book, I want it to kind of look good. I want to see the cover in my library when I open it, just like you want to see cover art on a CD in your iTunes library. So, getting back to where we were, I then scroll down to the table of contents page, Control-B, and type contents. And because that's kind of an important one, I like to make that bold. So right-click, Properties, B for bold, OK. You could also make it italics and different colors. It's a little more than I want to do, but certainly you can feel free to do it. Now, to save time making the table of contents, I've got a couple of other tricks. One is I'll take a quick screenshot of this contents page and put it to the side to refer to as I'm going. So let's do that. We're going to click, I've got a shortcut to the Snipping tool in Windows 10, and we'll just open that up. Give me a new screenshot, and I just need the data on the page. And you know what we can do? We can put that to the side here, and we can just move things over a bit so we can see that on the right side as we're working. Now, the other thing I like to do is I like to adjust the page labels. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, if we scroll down to the preface, we can see the preface is on page Roman numerals VII. But this file says it's on page 13. Now, it is the 13th page in the PDF, but I want a page label that matches this. And that will save me time as I build up these contents if I get those things aligned. So what I do is I just keep an eye on the pages as I scroll through a couple of more until I get to the first page. So there's page 9 in Roman numerals, page 10 in Roman numerals. This is probably page 1, I'm going to guess, the Arabic standard letter number, page 1, page 2, page 3. Yes, indeed, that's page 3. So let's get those page numbers set up. Now I sort of know where I am in the book. Let's click Organize Pages. And so I know that's page 3. This is page Arabic 1. The fastest way to do this is to do them in order. So if I go cover, and then I'm going to shift click on the end of the cover. Now, of course, covers don't normally have a page label at all in a real book. The cover is the cover. But to just get things quickly aligned, I will make those pages with a prefix cover dash. So it's going to be cover dash 1, cover dash 2, etc. And here you can see cover 1, cover 2, cover 3. And that means now this is page 1, 2, 3, but it's not Roman numerals. That's okay. Let's fix that next. So I'm going to click the first page and scroll down to the last of the Roman numeral pages, which is now here. I'm going to shift click to select them all. And we do those page labels don't need the prefix anymore. We're going to make it Roman numerals lowercase just to match what was printed in the book, and apply. And now, because I did those in order, now this is Arabic page 1, page 2, and indeed page 3 has page label 3. Page X is X. Everything's aligned, which means now I can save some time by looking over here at my preface and just jumping through it from page to page. By the way, this also only works because I've preserved the blank pages, which I don't care about. That just keeps things aligned. If I didn't preserve blank pages, my page numbers would be a mess, and I'd have to go through, if it was important to me, and fix them all. But now I don't even have to do that. So page VII is preface, and a Control-B, and I type preface. And now I can see over here, chapter 1 is on page 3, so I can just jump to a 3. There it is, Control-B, and I take a little liberty. I always just type the numeral 1, even if it's typed out in the table of contents, the word 1. It's just the way I like to do it. You can be as pedantic or as sloppy as you want to be. After all, this is your book. Also, I could have maybe put the subtext in here in which the media covers voodoo science. I'm not going to bother with that, but again, you could if you want. The other thing to know about is in some books you'll have like part 1, chapter 2, and then part 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. You can do that as well and indent things. So just to give you an idea, I could indent this preface underneath contents, or I could, indent it on part 1 could have chapter 1 indented underneath it. Now I'll just undo that because it doesn't apply in this book, but it is important. And this doesn't seem like an important step now, but when you're reading the book in your PDF reader, either on a PC, on a Mac, or most importantly on your tablet, having a really clean, logical, nested hierarchy of table of contents will be really important to you. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's just speed things up and do the rest of the table of contents. Jump to the page 28, which is 2, Control-B, and type that out. Okay, that only took about 2 minutes, and I'm just going to tab through the index here and see if there's anything after it. Sometimes there's a page about the author as the last page in the book, which is not included on the table of contents, but in this case there is none. That's the last page. I also like to just quickly click and tab through and make sure that I haven't made any mistakes and that each bookmark link lands on the chapter first page like it should, and also keeping an eye for typos and spelling errors, which do crop up. And that looks pretty good. And notice I even put a bookmark link to the cover. Some people will want to even put a bookmark link to the title page and to the copyright page. I personally don't bother with that. I think it's a little more minutia. I always know that those pages are always just a couple after the cover anyway, so I can find them quickly, and I'm never looking for them, so it doesn't really matter. But being able to jump to any given chapter is helpful. The other thing you could do, if you really want to be over the top on this, is you could make the text on the table of contents also a clickable link to the chapter. Now I don't do that because I've already got a clickable link in the electronic table of contents. That was the point of this exercise. But someone that's a little more old school might want to be able to jump through the book from the table of contents, and in that case you could do that. Unfortunately, you can only do that after you've done the OCR step, which we'll do next, which I haven't done yet, because I have to be able to select the text and then make it a clickable link to a destination within the document. But I'm going to dispense with that. That's personally not something I do. Now, we've got the page numbers lined up. We've got an electronic table of contents. Now we can do the optical character recognition. I do it in 2 steps. My sort of safety step and then my fast and furious final step, and I keep both copies, both results of those OCR processes. So let me show you that. First, I open up the Enhanced Scans text recognition page. I put a shortcut to it in this toolbar just because I use it all the time. You won't see that by default if you're in Adobe Acrobat Pro, but you can add that to the toolbar. I start with my first scan. I do all pages, of course, English US. Settings, I do the searchable image format. Searchable image format. And downsample of 300 dpi. It was already scanned at 300 dpi, so there'll be no downsampling required. Doing this will not only do the OCR optical character recognition step, it will also do some enhancements. The size of the file will shrink by about 25%. So if it's 111,000 kilobytes now, it'll probably shrink down to, well under 100,000, probably about 80,000, I'm going to guess. So this will take some time, but we'll just say OK, and then we click Recognize Text and let it do its thing. It goes to town, basically looking for text on each page. What it does is when it finds text, it inserts an invisible layer. This is kind of interesting. It inserts an invisible layer for the text that it finds so that you can then, select and copy and paste that text somewhere else. But it doesn't do a huge change to what is essentially a photograph of the page. Each one of these pages is really, when you think about it, a scan is just a photograph of the page. So the scan is left essentially unchanged, just a little bit of optimization to reduce the file size a little bit, a little compression, I guess, but nothing substantial. In the next step, we'll redo the OCR with the editable text turned on. And we'll do that for two reasons. One, it will result in a much smaller file size, and two, it will actually be a cleaner font, a cleaner final result, because what it does is it essentially replaces the photograph of each word with an actual visible text layer for each word. So you're actually converting it back into a text document, not just a photograph of a text document with an invisible text layer, but an actual text document. And we'll see those results when we're done. So let's just let this run in fast motion. We'll just cut to the chase here. And we're done. That only took about 10 minutes or so. And if I go to any page, it doesn't matter, I can now select the text. So again, it has inserted that invisible text layer. One other thing I forgot to do earlier, I'm going to do now, is I want to change the behavior of this document in that whenever I open it in a PDF reader, I want to open with this Bookmarks tab open. That's just my personal preference. So the fastest way to do that is just hit Control-D and make sure you're on the Initial View tab to go into Document Properties and say Initial View is Bookmarks, Panel, and the page. So we select that. And the other thing, I'll just double check the metadata in here. The title looks good, author's good, subject, keywords. For some reason, it puts these double quotes in from my scanning application. I'm not sure if they get in the way or not, but I always like to just remove them. So that's nice and clean. Initial View is what I want. We can go OK. And now I'm going to do a Save As. So I'm not going to change my original, fat, uncompressed, un-OCR'd copy. I'll eventually delete that. But right now I'm going to do a Save As. So that's File or Alt-F, and then A for Save As. Or you could do Control-Shift-S is your shortcut. And we'll keep it in the Documents folder where I'm working. And just to keep things similar but able to tell them apart, I like to put OCR S for searchable in the file name. And we'll let that save, and when that's done saving, we'll see how small the file is. And the original one here was 111 meg, and now it's gone to 84 megs. What I predict, about 80 megs, so I was pretty close to my approximation. So that's the first round of OCR. Now I do the second round of OCR, which, like I said, is pretty extreme, but the good news is this isn't just to compress the heck out of everything until it's as illegible as a 1990s style fax, but instead it does this really clever text replacement that ends up with a really compact but really legible copy. Now the downside is this step takes quite a bit longer, so you're going to want to start this and then go to bed or go have a shower or go do something more useful and come back in about an hour when it's done. The other thing I like to do is embed an index. This makes searching the document later much more efficient, and it really adds almost nothing to the file size. So I'm going to click This icon, again, I put a shortcut to it on the desktop, or I put a shortcut to it on the toolbar. We'll just click that. This document does not yet contain an embedded index, and I click Embed Index. This only takes about 10 seconds or so. And again, this just makes searching the document in the future that much faster. It basically is just an extra step I like to do that really doesn't cost anything, but will pay off later. So we click OK. Okay, now that we've got our searchable text version of the document and the index embedded, now we can do the other version, the editable text. The other thing I'll do at this point, you could do all pages again. Personally, I'll skip the cover this time. That's good enough for what I want. We'll say start at page, I got to be careful here. It's page label I, but it's PDF page 7. So at PDF page 7, I want to do page range page 7 until the end. And we change the output from searchable to editable, editable text and images. Click OK and click Recognize Text, and again let it go. It'll take quite a bit longer than the searchable, but again the results will be fantastic, and I'll show you that in a moment when this is done with the magic of editing. So here we are, about 45 minutes later. The second OCR pass is done. Let's do a File, Save As. And just to keep track of the difference, we'll give it a slightly different name, E for the editable. And let's put that index in there as well, the embedded index. It's interesting that you have to do it again. For some reason it doesn't get preserved when you run the second OCR pass. By the way, I could have just gone directly to the second pass and just kept the editable version. The reason I don't is kind of a personal historical reason. When I was doing textbooks with a lot of diagrams, sometimes the diagrams would get messed up when doing the editable version. So I would keep both the searchable regular version and the editable version around. It's just sort of my workflow, and that's how I do things. So let's now look at what we have here. So there's the original file, 111 meg. The searchable version got compressed down to about just 84.4. But look at that. The editable version is 15 meg. We went from 111 meg to 15 meg. And just to compare the quality, so here we are in that version. Let's go to a random page. Now let's go to the contents. And I'm going to zoom way in here. So that's 300%, and then we'll also open just the regular one and zoom that in on the same page to 300% to compare the quality difference. Actually, let's zoom in a little bit more. And let's look at the word preface, for example. So this is the regular searchable, slightly larger 85 meg file. And then here's the tiny, zoom that into 600, 800. Here's the editable text version. So let me jump back and forth between them. So this is the one from the smaller file. This is the one from the larger file. They both are selectable. I can select the text. I can select the text. But notice this version, the smaller file, is actually sharper. That's because it has replaced the photograph of the word with all of the photographic artifacting with an actual scalable font. So no matter how much you zoom, it stays sharp, which you cannot say about the traditional version. That's one of the reasons why I really like this editable text scan. It actually gives you a better result and a smaller file size. So with that out of the way, we can now get rid of the original version. the original scan. I don't need that anymore. I've got 2 OCR versions and they're both good. And I technically probably don't need to keep the 85 meg searchable version around. But I typically do, just in case. If one day I find there's some sort of problem with the editable text version, I've got this as sort of a backup. But really, for all intents and purposes, this 15 meg file is now the file that I'm going to use going forward. I'm just going to change the name to get rid of that. Oop, can't do it until I close it in Adobe. So we'll just close these 2 files. We're done with them. I'll change the file name. And now, as part of my workflow, I will put a copy, holding Control button down, a copy into my new books folder, which is a watch folder on Calibre. And Calibre is going to absorb that into my library. And now I can take both of these and put them in my archive just in case there's any problems in the future. But that's really just a precautionary backup. So that's it. That's processing a book through Adobe Acrobat Pro. Thanks for watching, everyone.